The funeral reception didn't just turn uncomfortable. It turned vicious the moment her husband chose humiliation over loyalty, openly parading his mistress while his grieving wife stood frozen in silence. His family joined in, guests pulled out their phones, and no one in that room had the slightest idea that Gabrielle had just inherited her father's $15 billion resort empire. The very mansion they laughed in, the jobs they depended on, the futures they thought they controlled, all of it now belonged to her, though she said nothing as the afternoon sun spilled through towering windows, stretching shadows across worn marble floors that felt colder than ever, because just 3 hours earlier she had buried her father, watched the only person who ever truly loved her disappear beneath the earth, and now she stood surrounded by people already calculating what they could take. Dressed in plain black with nothing but a silver locket, eyes swollen, hands trembling around untouched water. She had expected quiet remembrance for Robert Sterling, the man who built everything from nothing. But instead the doors burst open and Andre walked in, not alone but with Candace on his arm, younger, dressed in shameless red, a woman Gabrielle herself had hired, a mistake now standing too close, smiling too boldly, as Andre kissed her in full view of everyone, right there in front of his wife. And like clockwork the phones came out, capturing every second of a scandal they knew would spread. While Gabrielle stood near the window, unable to scream, unable to move, grief choking her voice as she watched her marriage collapse in the same room meant to honor her father. Then came Lorraine, sharp as ever, champagne in hand, slicing through what little dignity remained with a loud, mocking question about why Gabrielle always looked miserable, drawing cruel laughter that echoed through the hall, followed by Andre's brothers piling on, mocking her grief, accusing her of playing victim even. Now, as more laughter followed, sharper, louder, more deliberate, while Gabrielle's chest tightened and her eyes searched Andre's face for something. Anything. But he only shrugged as Candace leaned in, whispered something that made him smile before he kissed her again, slower this time, deliberate, a message meant for everyone watching. Gabrielle was nothing, and when she finally tried to speak, to reclaim even a shred of control, Andre silenced her with a raised hand and a cold voice, telling her not to ruin the mood, as Lorraine raised her glass and agreed, dismissing Robert's death as something already past while reducing Gabrielle to an inconvenience. The room buzzing with murmurs and quiet anticipation as some looked away in shame and others kept recording, waiting for her to break. But she didn't, not yet, because instead she turned and walked toward the balcony, each step steady, controlled, almost too calm, and behind her, Candace said something that sent another wave of laughter through the crowd, though Gabrielle didn't hear it and didn't need to, because something inside her had already shifted, and what none of them realized was that by the time she came back, everything they thought they owned would already be slipping through their fingers. The laughter behind her said everything she needed to know, echoing louder than any words as Gabrielle reached the balcony doors and caught sight of a man standing quietly in the corner. Mr. Harrison, her father's lawyer. Tall, composed, his gray hair perfectly in place. A black leather folder pressed against his chest as he watched the chaos unfold with an expression that wasn't just sorrow, but something sharper, something almost expectant. And when their eyes met, he simply checked his watch and gave her the slightest nod, a silent message to wait, to endure just a little longer, gripping the silver locket her father had given her. Gabrielle stepped outside into the cool air, the sprawling garden stretching endlessly below, every inch of the estate a testament to her father's sacrifice, every stone a reminder of the life he built from nothing, while behind the glass the mockery continued. Andre laughing with Candace, his arm draped over her like Gabrielle had never existed, his family drinking, celebrating, completely forgetting the reason they had gathered, completely forgetting Robert Sterling. Everyone except Gabrielle, until a gentle voice broke through her thoughts as Mrs. Williams, the housekeeper who had stood by her father for decades, approached with quiet compassion, offering water and words that nearly shattered her fragile composure, reminding her that her father loved her more than anything. And then, almost as if revealing a secret, telling her that Mr. Harrison had been waiting for her, that her father had left very specific instructions, and that now, right now, was the time, prompting Gabriel to glance once more through the glass where Andre fed cake to his mistress. And his family laughed like it was a celebration instead of a funeral. And with a quiet decision forming beneath her grief, she agreed to meet in her father's study. Standing alone for one last moment on the balcony, she let the breeze dry her tears and closed her eyes. And suddenly she wasn't there anymore. She was 8 years old again in a cramped apartment, watching her father put on a janitor's uniform, hearing his voice tell her to never let anyone make her feel small, to understand that true strength didn't need to shout, feeling the weight of the silver locket as he placed it in her hands and promised he would always be with her, a promise he kept through decades of relentless work that turned nothing into a $15 billion empire, through loss, through struggle, through raising her alone after her mother died, teaching her everything, lessons she had somehow buried beneath years of trying to make a failing marriage work, a marriage that now revealed itself for what it truly was. As memories of Andre's charm twisted into something darker, his ambition into manipulation, his love into something hollow, his betrayal no longer a suspicion but a certainty, especially now that she knew how easily he had abandoned her during her father's final months, choosing distance, choosing excuses, choosing Candace. And as Gabrielle stepped into her father's study, the familiar scent of cigars and old books wrapping around her like a final embrace, something inside her shifted, something steadier, colder, clearer, while Mr. Harrison entered behind her, closing the door with quiet finality before placing the folder on the desk and offering his condolences, his tone respectful but deliberate, as if this moment had been rehearsed long before today. And when he explained that her father had insisted this conversation happen after the reception began, after people revealed who they really were when they thought she was weakest, Gabrielle felt her heartbeat quicken, confusion giving. Weight as something sharper as he opened the folder and revealed that her father had spent the last year preparing for this exact moment, that nothing happening tonight was a surprise to him, that he had known Andre was unfaithful, had proof, undeniable proof, photos, emails, financial records, every detail carefully documented, including Candace. And as Mr. Harrison paused, the weight of it all settled in, heavier than grief itself, because this wasn't just betrayal being exposed. This was something far more calculated, something her father had set in motion long before he died, and Gabrielle was only just beginning to understand that the humiliation she endured tonight wasn't the end of her story. It was the beginning of something far more devastating for everyone else. He also knew Andre and his family would come for everything the second he was gone. And as those words settled in, the tears in Gabrielle's eyes changed. They burned now, sharp with anger instead of grief, while Mr. Harrison continued in that calm, steady voice, explaining that 6 months ago her father had quietly restructured his entire estate, setting precise conditions, leaving nothing to chance, even arranging a recorded message to be played at the exact moment of the will reading, which, according to his instructions, had to happen publicly in front of everyone at the reception exactly 3 hours after the burial. And when he checked his watch and said they had 5 minutes left, Gabrielle felt her pulse quicken as she asked what was in the will, only for him to give a faint, knowing smile and answer that it contained everything she deserved and nothing for those who had never respected her. 5 minutes later, the entire hall fell into an uneasy silence as Mr. Harrison called everyone together, announcing the formal reading of Robert Sterling's last will and testament, drawing Andre to the front row with Candace practically draped over him, Lorraine sitting beside them already imagining her share, Trevor and Malik whispering with smug confidence, while the rest of the guests filled the room, phones ready, curiosity buzzing, until Gabrielle entered last, composed now, face washed, hair fixed, the silver locket visible against her dress, as she chose a seat in the back, far from the people who had just humiliated her. At the front, Mr. Harrison stood beside a large screen, his tone formal as he explained that before the legal documents were read, Robert Sterling had requested a video message be played. The moment the screen lit up and her father appeared, frilier, thinner, but with eyes still sharp enough to command the room. Every whisper died instantly, his voice steady as he spoke about his life, about building an empire from nothing, about loving his daughter beyond words, before his tone shifted, darker, more deliberate, as he admitted he had been watching, waiting, choosing silence, so he could see who people really were when they thought he no longer could. And the air in the room tightened as he revealed everything. Andre's betrayal, the affair with Candace. The proof he had gathered, the photos, the emails, the stolen money. Each word landing like a hammer as Candace's confidence shattered and Andre shot to his feet in protest, demanding the video be stopped. But it didn't stop. It only got worse, exposing not just him but his entire family, their insults, their greed, their quiet contempt for Gabrielle, until Lorraine's glass slipped from her hand and shattered on the floor, the sound echoing like a warning. Then came the final blow as Robert declared that every single asset, every resort, every account, every inch of the estate they stood in belonged entirely to Gabrielle, and the room exploded into chaos, voices rising, accusations flying, disbelief turning into panic. But through it all the video continued, cold and final, leaving nothing to Andre, nothing to his family, reminding them of the prenuptial agreement that stripped him of any claim, warning them that even their jobs now depended on Gabrielle's mercy, before softening. Only for a moment as he spoke directly to his daughter, reminding her of her strength, of her worth, urging her not to let anyone make her small again, to take what was hers and decide who deserved to stay in her life. And when the screen finally went black, the silence that followed felt heavier than anything before it, until the chaos returned even louder. But Gabrielle didn't react the way they expected, because when she stood up this time, she wasn't the same woman who had walked in earlier. Something inside her had shifted completely, awakened by her father's words. And as Mr. Harrison handed her the documents confirming her full ownership, Andre pushed through the crowd in desperation, trying to argue, trying to reclaim control, only for Gabrielle to raise her hand, calm, firm, final, silencing him the same way he had silenced her voice steady as she spoke the words that changed everything. This mansion was hers. The global resorts were hers. The power they had mocked her for. Not having had always been within reach, and now, finally, it was entirely, undeniably hers. Every bank account, every investment, every single asset her father had ever built. Hers. And this time when Gabrielle said it, there was no hesitation, no tremble, just quiet authority as she lifted her phone and revealed one final twist no one in that room had seen coming. It had been recording for the last 3 hours, capturing every insult, every laugh, every moment they thought they could get away with. And as the realization hit, Andre's face drained of color while she calmly listed their words back to them. Him kissing his mistress in her father's home, his mother calling her pathetic, his brothers mocking her grief, until he tried to interrupt, only to be silenced again as she turned to Candace with a cold finality that stripped away every ounce of confidence the younger woman had walked in with, firing her on the spot and ordering security to escort her out, which they did without hesitation as Candace stood frozen, unable to argue, unable to even look back. Then Gabrielle faced Lorraine, Trevor, and Malik, reminding them of their comfortable positions within Sterling Resorts, the 6-figure salaries, the housing, the cars, all of it provided by the empire they had just disrespected. And when Lorraine tried to backtrack, her voice suddenly soft and pleading. Gabrielle cut through it with brutal clarity, repeating their words, their laughter, their plans to take everything. Before delivering the verdict they never imagined possible. They were all fired, effective immediately, with 48 hours to vacate everything they had been given. And when Trevor protested about contracts, Mr. Harrison stepped in with precise legal calm to dismantle that illusion, making it clear they had no protection, no leverage, nothing. Desperation turned to manipulation as Malik tried to play the family card. But Gabrielle shut that down just as quickly, reminding them that her father had already defined what family meant. And they weren't it, Before Andre made one last attempt, grabbing her arm, his voice shifting from arrogance to desperation as he begged for another chance. Talked about fixing things, about counseling, about love, but Gabrielle pulled away without emotion, telling him it was over, that she wanted a divorce, and reminding him of the prenuptial agreement he had signed so eagerly when he thought it would benefit him, only for Mr. Harrison to confirm that it was completely ironclad, leaving Andre with nothing but the debt he had brought into the marriage, a humiliating detail that rippled through the room like shockwaves. And just when it seemed like it couldn't get worse, it did, because Mr. Harrison revealed the final piece her father had prepared, the evidence of embezzlement. Millions siphoned from the company to fund Andre's affair. And before Andre could even form a proper denial, the doors opened and police officers stepped inside, placing him under arrest in front of everyone. The same crowd that had laughed at Gabriel, now watching in stunned silence as he was handcuffed and led away, his family scrambling behind him, their voices fading into chaos and disbelief while the remaining guests stood frozen, phones raised again, capturing the complete reversal of power. And when the room finally emptied, leaving only Gabrielle and Mr. Harrison, the weight of everything settled in. But this time it didn't crush her, it steadied her. As she sat in her father's chair, the locket warm against her skin, listening as Mr. Harrison confirmed that every detail had been carefully planned, that her father had known exactly how this would unfold, and had ensured that Andre would face consequences without ever being able to manipulate her again. And in the months that followed, the world watched as the story went viral, as Andre faced trial in prison, as the people who once mocked her lost everything they'd taken for granted, and as Gabrielle stepped fully into the role she had been prepared for her entire life, transforming grief into power, proving every doubt wrong, and building on her father's legacy with a strength that no longer needed to be quiet, because now everyone could see it, and more importantly, no one would ever dare to underestimate her again. She gave interviews where she spoke not just about success, but about survival, about her father's legacy, about being underestimated, about finding strength when everything around her collapsed. But despite the headlines, the awards, and the power she now held, the moment that truly mattered came exactly 1 year after her father's death, when Gabrielle stood alone at his grave on a quiet Sunday morning, the world finally silent around her as she placed white roses, his favorite, against the headstone and whispered softly, apologizing for not visiting more, explaining how busy life had become, how overwhelming everything was, yet somehow knowing he would understand. She sank down onto the grass without caring about her expensive dress, admitting she had done what he asked, that she had found her strength, that she had stopped letting people make her feel small, telling him the company was thriving, that new deals in Japan and Australia had been signed, achievements she wished he could have seen, her voice breaking as she confessed how much she missed him, how some mornings she still reached for her phone to call him before reality hit. Yet even in that pain, she felt his presence guiding her, especially in the moments that mattered most, when decisions were heavy and the pressure was real, his voice still echoing in her mind, steady and certain. When she opened the locket around her neck for the first time in months, expecting only the familiar photo of their past, she discovered something she had somehow never noticed, a tiny folded note hidden inside. And as her hands trembled and she unfolded it, reading his careful handwriting reminding her that she was built to build empires no matter who tried to break her, the final piece of his plan clicked into place, hitting her harder than anything before, because even years ago he had been preparing her for this exact moment, leaving behind not just an empire, but a mindset she could never lose. And as she pressed the note to her chest, her tears turned from sorrow to gratitude, realizing that everything she had endured, every betrayal, every humiliation, had been the fire that forged her into the woman she had become. When she finally stood, brushing off her dress and thanking him one last time, promising to make him proud every single day, she walked back to her car not as someone broken by loss, but as someone rebuilt by it. And as the city passed by her window, the same city where her father had started with nothing, Her phone buzzed relentlessly with opportunities, challenges, and reminders of the life she now controlled. From expansion plans to legal updates about Andre, still trying to fight a battle he had already lost, to interview requests from the world that once ignored her, and she couldn't help but smile at how much had changed in just 1 year, because the woman she used to be, the one who stayed silent, who accepted disrespect, who doubted her own worth, no longer existed. By the time she stepped into Sterling Global headquarters, greeted with genuine respect from employees who now saw her not just as an heir, but as a leader, she carried herself with a confidence that couldn't be faked, treating everyone with the dignity her father had taught her to value. And even as her day filled with high-level decisions, negotiations, and power moves, nothing shook her. Not even the mention of Andre's desperate legal attempts or Candace's sudden desire to apologize after her own life began to crumble, because Gabrielle saw through it all now, rejecting it without hesitation, understanding that people only changed their tone when they lost access to what they once exploited. Standing alone in her father's office, looking out over the empire that was now hers, she realized the most unexpected truth of all. The twist her father had prepared her to understand. Not revenge, not power, not even success had truly changed her life, but clarity had. The clarity to walk away without bitterness, to let consequences unfold without interference, to build something greater instead of tearing others down. And in that moment, she felt something she hadn't felt in a long time. Peace, real, unshakable peace, because she no longer needed to prove anything to anyone. She simply needed to continue forward, stronger, wiser, and completely in control of her own story, the woman her father had always believed she could become, the woman who turned her greatest pain into unstoppable power. And this time, there was no one left who could take that away from her.